Oh dear God, here we go again. So, I saw there was another controversy about race swapping characters, this time from the anime show Dandadan. A 16-year-old artist decided to do a race swap of the main characters Okarun and Momo, making the Japanese characters black, posted that to Twitter, and all hell broke loose. Apparently, Japanese people weren't happy with the race swap, claiming that this was appropriating their culture, and they took pot shots at the high school student. Now, we do need to keep in mind that some of those people might not actually be Japanese. A few months ago, one of the more prolific defenders of Japanese culture, Colonel Otaku Gatekeeper, turned out to be a British dude posing as Japanese for reasons. So it's possible that some of the folks reacting to this artwork aren't actually Japanese either. That doesn't change that there was a firestorm of criticism over the art. I've made videos about this before, and my attitude hasn't changed. As I've said for years, I don't agree with race swapping characters. This is just a bad idea from the start. When someone creates artwork, when they create a story, they're doing it from their perspective, and it's ridiculous for someone to come in and decide that they're going to fix this person's work by changing it to suit their worldview. This is especially true for Japanese stuff. It's well known that Japan isn't a very open society. You could count the number of foreigners in the country on one hand. I'm joking, but in general, there aren't that many foreigners in Japan. It's about 2%. So it's ridiculous for anyone to look at manga or anime and go, how come none of them are black? Because there's not a lot of black people in Japan. If you have a show that's set in a high school in modern Japan, the expectation that any of the characters would be black or Hispanic or Native American or Indian, anything other than Japanese, is insane. Does that mean that no mangaka or anime producer should make comics or shows with multiracial casts? No, obviously not. If they want to make something featuring non-Japanese characters, they can have at it. But it's unfair to expect that's what you're going to see. That brings us to this issue of race swapping characters, particularly blackwashing characters, because this has gotten very common in the last decade. I did a video about this a few years ago, and it seems like nothing's changed. And look, I get it. I'm black. I know my history. Everybody likes our culture. Everybody likes our style. Everybody co-ops our stuff. But they don't particularly like us, so they're not going to put any black people in their stories. It sucks, I understand, but this trend of taking popular characters, blackwashing them, presenting this to the world as if it's normal, and then acting surprised when everybody's not down with it, not cool. That said, the reaction to this, especially considering that the person who created the art is 16, is beyond stupid. To say that these critics were unhinged is an understatement. Just tons of overtly racist comments targeting a teenager over a drawing. Last I checked, the artist had locked down their account because of the responses, and they weren't the only one. One of the voice actors for the English dub decided to support the artist, and that didn't go well either. AJ Beckles, who voices Okarun, praised the artist, which turned people's eyes to him, and their responses were so negative that he deleted his Twitter account, which, surprise, pissed them off even more. Why? Well, because it's really hard to be a douche to somebody when they can't see what you're doing. Now, irony of ironies, AJ Beckles is black, so it's possible that this 16-year-old artist decided to depict Okarun as black because of that. Did anyone bother to consider that? Come on. This is the internet, which is why many responded to Beckles with nothing but racial slurs, because nothing says that people should be able to disagree and then sit down and have a beer together, like repeating all the colorful insults your granddaddy taught you about those people. The hypocrisy of all this is amazing, and there's tons of it on both sides. I'll just start with the simplest one. If anybody decided to take a character from a show, book, movie, or video game that was canonically non-white, if they were black, if they were Asian, if they were Hispanic, and made them white, the internet would lose its mind. If anyone decided to take a female character and make her male, the internet would lose its mind. If anyone decided to take a gay or trans character and make them straight or not trans, the internet would lose its mind. But for some reason, this is supposed to get a pass the other way around. It's perfectly okay as long as the character's not being made straight, white, or male, and I'm just not buying it. You can't have it both ways. If you think changing characters is wrong, then it's always wrong. It's not just wrong when it's done to your group. And this gets back to the issue of representation and the claim that this is a problem in certain media and art forms. Like I said before, I get this argument. I'm black. I understand. I've liked anime before I even knew what it was. I go all the way back to Thundercats, Transformers, and G.I. Joe, and all the 80s intros from when I was a kid. All that's anime. I've grown up with this stuff. It'd be nice if black people were included in these things too, but I also understand that Japan is not full of black people, so I don't expect to see a bunch of black people in Japanese media. I'm not offended because it doesn't make any sense to expect that Japanese creators would depict a group of people in their works who aren't even a part of their culture and who they generally aren't even interested in. Let's not forget that part. Most Japanese people don't care about black people. It's silly to expect, let alone demand, that they depict us in their works no matter how much we love those works. I know that's annoying, but that's the reality of the situation. By the way, that doesn't mean that Japan doesn't have an issue with how it treats dark-skinned people. Back in 2018, there was a controversy over how an ad depicted tennis star Naomi Osaka. She's half Japanese and half Haitian, but the ad made her look lighter and Caucasian. Japan has a long history of racism. That's not an excuse, just an observation. When something's blatantly biased, like the ad, by all means, call it out. But you can't force someone to tell stories they're not interested in telling. Again, if someone's telling a story set in the middle of modern Japan, it's ridiculous to expect that the characters will be anything other than Japanese. On the flip side, while some of the people doing the blackwashing are douchey about it, sometimes these things are taken out of context. From what I could find, this wasn't a case of someone claiming they were fixing someone's artwork. This was a 16-year-old drawing characters a different way, and that's nothing new. I saw this 25 years ago when I was in high school, with people drawing Saiyans from Dragon Ball as black. Earlier in the 90s, it was The Simpsons. I think I still have one of those black Simpsons shirts somewhere. I don't think people did that because they were trying to fix someone's work. It was just a little bit of fun. Obviously, there are tons of people trying to make a point by race-swapping characters because they don't feel like they can see themselves in the characters. Okay, well, if you can't see yourself in the character, I suggest you use this thing called imagination and imagine you're the character, not that they're you. That's kind of how this is supposed to work. You can't expect that every single time someone sits down and tells a story, they're going to make the story about you or your group. That's just not realistic. But it's also not realistic to expect that if somebody likes a thing, that they're not going to occasionally depict the characters as looking like or being like them. That's also kind of what people do. As long as they're not over here saying that this is what things ought to be, and they're not throwing it in people's faces or being a douche about it, there's no reason to attack them. And that's doubly true if they're in high school. I shouldn't have to say that. I shouldn't have to tell grown-ass people not to attack a teenager over some art they probably didn't even draw, but just traced and recolored. If you don't like it, fine, move on. You don't have to be an asshole. I know for some of those people that struggle is real. So real. But I promise you, you don't look based attacking a 16-year-old. You look like a bully and a coward. I don't like the race swapping either, but I'm not losing my sleep over it. It's the internet. People are going to race swap characters. You can't stop them, but you can control yourself. If you're over here freaking out over some bad fan art to the point you're attacking a high schooler and a voice actor for supporting the high schooler so much that they both shut down their Twitter accounts because you can't stop calling them racial slurs, you're not the hero of the story. You're the villain. You've lost the plot, and you're probably the type who'd catch an ass whooping for Momo. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.